All right, we are ready to go. Thank you everyone for helping and being patient with our technology issues, but we are now up and running. So I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:19 p.m. And the first item on our agenda is public input. So if there's anyone from the public who would like to come forward and say anything, please approach the chair. And when you do, please state your name and address. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna flip it over. Press that.
All right, my name is Tiana Coleman, and I live at 33 Simeon Wilson Road in Amherst. I'm speaking today to outline why it is so crucial that the board takes seriously the concerns that have been raised by various residents and carefully review the actions of the superintendent as they relate to personnel matters. You have heard me say in the past that the problem is that we don't trust the process. We want it to play out, but we don't trust it. But I'm not sure that I've made very clear what I mean by that, so let me try again. Though I attended the beginning of the February 14th ASB meeting, I left early and just recently listened to the recording where Chair Gauthier reported that they went ahead and were able to get information regarding the process that was taken regarding the latest allegations against Mr. Benavides in terms of what our superintendent did. He said they had been assured by the Board of Education that our superintendent acted properly and did everything that was legally required of him leading up to and including reporting it to the state. He then said, as a board, we've done our due diligence that everything was followed to a T. From our vantage point, everything was done properly and handled as it should have been. I hope you, the SCSB, knows that what is expected of the board is greater than that. And I am asking you to do a lot more due diligence. I also spoke with the State Board of Education, and this is what I found out. First, the State Board has no role in investigating the actions of the superintendent. That's your job. Their only role is to take any appropriate licensing actions, if necessary, after the resolution of an investigation, including subsequent appeals. Normally, the State Board does not investigate, the district carries out the investigation. The only reason the State Board is investigating the latest allegation is because the district that reported it, SAU 39, has no jurisdiction to investigate. It is an allegation from more than 22 or more years ago, and it is an allegation concerning events or actions that happened outside of our district. In other words, it doesn't concern a current or former student of SAU 39. It concerns a former student of another district with reason to believe that even at the time of the reported allegation, the alleged victim was a former, not current student of the outside district. Yes, the NHDOE does confirm that the standard of reasonable suspicion was met, and therefore our superintendent had a duty to report, as was done. The State Board also confirms that they have verified that the reasonable suspicion standard has been met to open an investigation. But that is not what I am concerned about regarding the superintendent's actions. I am not arguing that the superintendent reported something that he simply made up, nor am I arguing that there is no way the allegations have any credibility. That I will leave to the process to determine. My concern is about the process that took place before the recording, as well as the process that has taken place since the recording, as well as what I am concerned about could be a pattern of a bad process that's happening in our district. So let's go back to the allegation that happened this fall. The State Board also confirmed that that's a completely separate matter. It's not related in any way. And we know that that matter has been resolved. So the board, can now look into it. Before you said you couldn't because you might have to be a judiciary on this matter, but it's over. That's over. So you can go back and look into it. We know that it was concerning equipment. We all have heard the air purifier story. That was resolved as a misunderstanding. Yet we spent more than 2 months with our music program completely in disarray. without having a teacher and paying for a substitute and having a situation that hurt a lot of people. So we also know that what happened before the process even started, before an investigation took place, before it came to the board, before anything happened, we know, or we don't actually know, but I have very good reason to believe that the staff member who's concerned was threatened with losing their license, threatened with being fired, threatened with ruining their reputation and not being able to ever teach again. And this was before any process took place. We also know that it was such a huge amount of pressure to the point that an email went out to everyone telling them that this person had in fact resigned and was over and done, and that they weren't going to come back. Yet that wasn't true, and we now know that wasn't true. And yet no one ever corrected it. And we know that it was in the end resolved as a misunderstanding. So if people wouldn't have gotten involved and done anything about it, this staff member would have been gone over a misunderstanding. Now that's seriously concerning to me. And we have heard something somewhat similar happen to a member of this board. And I have heard reports of other staff who are no longer with us, who have had similar situations happen. So I'm very concerned about that. And I hope that you will look into it and investigate what happened, because that is just wrong. Now, the other thing is with this current allegation, it has been confirmed that the press release that went out was something that was only done by the SAU superintendent. The name was on there of the state board attorney, but she had nothing to do with that press release. She did not create it. She did not collaborate on it. She did not write it. She did not instruct for it to be done. She was made aware that it was going to go out, and her name was there because she is the contact for the state. But she did not do it, and she said that the state usually does not send out press releases at the stage of an investigation, and they usually will not even confirm or deny if an investigation is happening until it's been resolved. And so, why did this go out? Why did the press release go out? Not only, and why did it go out to so many different media organizations, and why is it so widespread? It's the same employee. Even if it's an allegation that in the end, even if it's in the end found to be something that is concerning, that needs to be addressed, that could be the case, but that doesn't mean that it was right for the press release to go out and ruin this teacher's reputation before any due process has even taken place. That's just not right. And, it said some things in there that seem to be, now that we know the truth of the allegation, it seems, and we know that the person who wrote the press release knew the truth of the allegation, it seemed to be hiding information, or at least it seemed to be making it seem like it could have been our students here and whatnot. It seemed to make it sound like something that it wasn't. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean it's serious. It could be a very serious allegation, but it still wasn't reported truthfully, in my opinion. I also want you to look into what happened leading up to the report. Why is the SAU 39 reporting an allegation from another school district from 20 years ago? What was it that happened leading up to that report that brought it to the attention of the superintendent? I want you to look into these things, because these are serious, and we have a lot of people who feel in this community like there is an environment that is hostile. And I want our administration to have an environment that is there for the employees until they no longer can be. That they are really actually there for them until they no longer can be, and someone who looks out for the best interest of the students. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else from the public here tonight that would like to speak?
We do not want to knock that over.
Please say your name and address for the record.
My name is Ropen Bieber. I live in Amherst. This will be a sort of continuation of my comment from the SAU board meeting on Thursday, in which I expressed my concerns about the Souhegan administration actively undermining the authority of Community Council as established in school board policy, as well as the principal's goal to encourage staff and students to have a voice and provide input. I encourage that I hope that the petition for certification of a new bargaining unit goes well, so that we may better reach that goal to have more staff input. I do my best to be informed on Souhegan's history and culture. I've seen and analyzed books and documentaries by the Souhegan community. I've read Souhegan newspapers that were written by students before I was born. I feel that the faculty, students, parents, and alumni of Souhegan have seen a gross distortion of the school's values, especially faculty that have expressed fear over the school's administrative leadership, a toxic work environment, if you will, students that have been scolded for expressing these concerns, and parents that have been lied to or had communications cut off from the SHS administration. This school is what inspired me to be an active and engaged citizen of my state, town, and community. I've been a member of the Community Council since my freshman year, although I'm unsure if I'll be removed for this statement as conduct that is not in keeping with the standards of the Souhegan community. Even after addressing the SAU board on Thursday, I got word that the previously mentioned administrator that I mentioned last meeting met with members of the Executive Council to express concerns about me being a problem for acknowledging the undermining of council's authority. This happened today, to my knowledge. I represent Souhegan students and students of the SAU as a member of the New Hampshire Legislative Youth Advisory Council. I'm participating in an internship as caucus staff for the New Hampshire House of Representatives. And none of this would have been possible if I had not been empowered and encouraged by Souhegan members of the community, by members of the Souhegan community that wanted to uphold these values of student voice and community decision. My experiences have taught me that no community, including the democratic school that Souhegan claims to be, can be truly democratic without the confidence of its members that it is democratic. When students feel that they do not have a stake in their school, they are disengaged as community members and as learners. It is the sad reality of Souhegan Cooperative High School that Souhegan students and staff are intimidated by their administration for speaking their mind and truth. I implore the board to assert its authority in this building and implore all members of Souhegan Community Council and the community at large to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else from the public?
Good evening, Souhegan Cooperative School Board. Long time no see. Representative Chun is a branch of Amherst. I come before you tonight to share some concerning conversations I've had with many teachers and staff. Many of them have approached me with concerns of a toxic work environment. One staff member told me that they were scared to work at Souhegan because, quote, if I ask too many questions, I might be out of a job. Another teacher told me just last week that they were scared to talk to the administration and mentioned Mike Berry by name. Now, these are just two of the stories I've heard in the 2 years since my run for school board. Now, these are just, as I said, two of the stories I've heard, but it seems that in those 2 years since I brought these issues to this board, they have not only gone unaddressed, but have gotten worse. As the previous speaker has shared with this group, it seems that instead of going after teachers and staff as they have before, which is probably the reason we've seen increased turnover, and we have no principal since the time Adam Steele became superintendent is still a principal in this district. There's not a single administrator in this building that is the same since I left Souhegan, and it seems that many teachers are opting to retire instead of staying here because they fear the administration. To expand on the point that they're now going after students, it came to my attention last week that a student here in the school was threatened by the principal of the school for recording a public announcement this principal made. And this principal threatened this student with a police report and actually filed a police report with the Amherst Police Department in violation of RSA 570, which is New Hampshire's wiretapping statute, which comes as a Class B felony. And I would like to get an answer from the board why we are threatening students with Class B felonies for recording public announcements made by a principal who is a public official. To continue on with my written speech, I have talked to staff about unionization since my senior year of high school, and many teachers have described it as a last resort. It seems that we've reached that point, and that is why I support the staff's effort to unionize. And if this board will not stand up and assert its authority, to protect its staff and stand up for its staff, it seems that they have no other choice than to unionize. My message to staff tonight is to continue your organizing efforts and to vote yes on March 29th. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to speak tonight? All right, seeing none, I do have an email that I had received, a few of us had received from Martin Goulet, who asked us to read this into the public minutes. And since we have a policy that we, not really a policy, but we've done this in the past, we agreed to do this. Says, dear Stephanie and John, I'm unable to attend the coming Souhegan Cooperative School Board meeting on 12/2/21. Is it possible to have the following read into the record on my behalf? I am Martin Goulet from 22 Veterans Road in Amherst. The SAU has responded to a recent right to know request I entered. Yet Souhegan Cooperative School Board was copied on that on February 17th. It indicates clearly that Adam Steele sent out a press release to 4 names and 3 media outlets on February 7th, approximately 11 a.m. regarding the Carl Benavides DOE investigation and administrative leave. Further, my request for a copy of the underlying complaint, redacted as needed to protect the complainant and the investigation, was denied under confidentiality considerations. The juxtaposition of 1, demonstrating how the SAU exercises discretion in sending out a press release related to this event, and 2, the position that the underlying complaint cannot be made public, even redacted in a way that protects the parties in the investigation, is quite informative and not in a way that reflects well on the SAU. Does this exercise of discretion by Mr. Steele reflect any policy on the part of the SAU or the Souhegan Cooperative School Board? When other teachers have been placed on administrative leave while investigations were conducted, were press releases issued and actively pushed to news outlets? I cannot recall any. If so, why? Doesn't that prejudice the sentiment of the community? If not, why was that done in this case? I have on numerous occasions now called for an SAU-wide investigation into the personnel, especially termination practices at the SAU under Mr. Steele's tenure. So far, that call has not been heeded. I hope now this concern prompts some rethinking that the Souhegan Cooperative School Board and ultimately the SAU board. And that's from Mark Goulet. Danae, I can forward that to you. Okay. All right. So that'll end public input. The one thing I want to say before we get to the presentation is I just want to congratulate all the different athletic and arts events that have been happening between the Division II state champs for basketball team, alpine ski team placed 3rd states, and we have individuals going on to individual races. The bowling team is in the state finals. Wrestling team is doing well. We had a great Pops concert last week. All-state jazz just happened, and poetry out loud as well. So we've had a lot going on. But congratulations to all these students who are working extra hard. All right, so we'll start the presentation. Stephanie, I believe think you are stepping up tonight. Thank you.
Just tell me when.
So, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Stephanie Fritz. I'm one of the art educators here, and I teach foundations right up to the AP Advanced classes. And so over the past few months, since November through till the middle of January, we've been working on something called an exhibition of learning. It starts very small. It's the first time we've been able to implement it here. And the purpose of an exhibition of learning is to connect with the community. So I have the privilege of being an educator in the classroom, and I get to see the aha moments that kids have. And my job is to facilitate their learning. I can't tell them like, this is what it has to look like, and therefore that's what it's going to be. My job is to say, here's a framework, and what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? What are you interested in exploring? How can you practice with different materials, experiment, and then revise the things that you're doing? What can you create? for sure perhaps you've seen some of the work around the building here. Behind me is one of the advanced arts students, Nora. She created this huge digital print that's behind me. And in fact, you actually look through it through two different lenses. So usually there's a red lens and you'll be able to see the face happy, and then there's a blue lens and the face looks like that. It's quite incredible. That was her first time using digital. So when we create an exhibition of learning, it's an authentic platform where we're able to share with the community those really exciting things that are happening in the classroom. And so this year every year I give the students the opportunity to create an installation exhibition. And this gives them the chance to write a real proposal that they actually submit to my principal and then to my custodial staff here. And they have to explain what they want to do and where they want to present. And they have to create a budget. And they have to explain what they plan on installing and when it's going up and when it's coming back down again. So they get some real life experience. If they leave the safety of the classroom and have to do that for something outside of the classroom, which is exciting as an artist. So what it does is it gives them the opportunity to then step outside their comfortable limits and really practice the work that they've been doing in the safety of the classroom and present it to the community. So I have a short clip to show you that was made by Shannon Hargreaves, who's not a student of mine specifically, but is a student here at Souhegan. And she created this documentary.
I think your sound should be down.
Okay.
Because I think I'm going to go through the album, right? So when you say go, if your sound's down, it'll be okay.
This is half of my project. This is the full life plaster cast. I've taken like weeks and weeks to slowly plaster my entire body, which has been a really taxing process, but it's worth it. And I'm essentially making two figures. There's this figure, which is the plaster one, and then there's a fabric figure that the plaster piece is going to be holding. So there is the fabric piece, which is supposed to be essentially your old self, like a mask. It's supposed to be like a shedded skin. And then the plaster piece is supposed to be like growing into your identity, and it will be holding the skin, showing where you come from, and just growing into who you are. I'm hoping to have wings on the back, like kind of butterfly wings, representing like a butterfly coming out of a chrysalis sort of thing. Representing like gender identity and like exploration within identity in general.
Oh, it's so cool. Everyone is doing something so different, but so like uniquely them in their art style. And it's really interesting to see where people are taking, because we've all like been here since the beginning. So it's really cool to see like no one's project really ever stays the same. It's really cool to see like what they've progressed from their first idea, their initial idea to now. And it's really interesting the topics that everyone's exploring. I'm excited to see everything up because I haven't really seen the final piece for anything. My project is an exploration of Brazilian culture. I'm using a lot of different colored papers and a lot of collaging to try and explore Brazil's culture and nature and wildlife. Oh, it's going to be more than 50 feet. It's long. This project has been changing for a while. It was a few different things before, and then so like finally settling on what I wanted to do in my topic was kind of challenging. Yeah,
I think for me it's really interesting because, you know, everyone starts off in one place and then they end up migrating to a completely different spot. And like what I was just saying of like I had one figure and now I have 5. Like that is a very big leap. And we all really help each other out with ideas and planning and stuff, especially when people are voicing like, hey, I'm having a hard time with this. Everyone is super supportive. I originally thought that I was going to make it more detailed, and I was really only going to make one of these 6-foot figures, but make it more 3D and more intricate. And then with time, you know, me and Steph, we sat down and we talked, and we kind of figured out that having
more and less detail would be better, especially for my kind of art style. So it was a crazy journey.
I've been part of the process as far as kids, kind of talking to me about their installation proposals and where and why, how, and what it means to them. And going and having the opportunity to go into their classroom and listen to them present their project to their peers and then get critical feedback on it. And so when you start to define all the elements of the project, planning it, talking about how they're going to do it, doing the project, getting the feedback from your peers and other adults. It's not just staff, you have other people that have experience in that field to come in and give feedback. It's just a really good, relevant, meaningful project.
So my project is an expressive piece of myself, kind of signifying my happiness with the lovely plants surrounding me and like this beautiful landscape that I've created over the years of my life. I think I neglect putting myself forward in the community sometimes because I'm a little bit weary of what people will think, but I think there's always an aspect of people being nervous of putting their art up. But with this assignment, I was really comfortable with showcasing it to the community because I was really comfortable and I was really happy with the way that turned out. In the class, as artists, we all see each other struggle and we have triumph. And sometimes we get stuck as artists and it's really great to see each other get stuck and we push forward.
It's a collection of like.
Thank you. That was good. We're in sync. So that's a little bit about how the process of the exhibition of learning came to be. And so for me, this is my dream job. This is where I've worked and wanted to be for at least the last 5 years. And I've got such a big vision for where we can go with the arts department. And having an exhibition of learning is something that I would like to see grow over time, to involve more than just the art department itself. I'd love to see it open up to all the educators here at Souhegan so that we can bring the community in and say, this is what we're doing. Come and have a look. Share those aha moments with us because we have the privilege of seeing them in our classroom every single day. And we want you to share that too. So thank you so much for your time tonight. Do you have any questions? John?
Thanks a lot for that. I wasn't sure what to expect when I saw this on the agenda. It hit me emotionally. I wasn't expecting that either. The inspiration I saw there, the growth, collaboration. I think that's a model that a lot of adults in our system should take heed of, and sometimes take a breath, step back, and evaluate, talk to some people. You can find a path forward that makes sense for everybody. And, to see that in our students, it's
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Stephanie, I want to say that was really nice to see. It's nice to see the growth of the kids. It's great to see that community of learning, right, where their kids are not just engaged in doing art, but they're engaged with, you as a teacher, engaged with Mike as a principal, engaged with our custodial staff. I mean, that is great to hear. Teaching them a little bit about a budget. Those are the big growths that I think are meaningful. So thank you. Thank you. I feel very privileged to be with these guys every day. So yeah, thank you. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye. All right, moving on. Update from Trinity Council. Patty.
Yeah.
So for community council, recently we've been working on a proposal for extra and co-curricular eligibility. And so this proposal makes it so clubs and activities have academic requirements the same way that sports do. But there will be a waiver process that allows students to explain their plan to get back on track academically and still be able to participate in their clubs. We've been talking about this proposal for about 4 weeks, and there's been a lot of discussion about it. It hasn't passed yet. And I feel like one of the main reasons is because in 1710, North Community Council is a club. So that has kind of been one of the sources of discussion. So we're looking to hopefully pass this in the next couple of weeks, and I'll have a better update on the proposal next.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Maddie? Any comments?
Yeah, I have some comments about community council, and they've had some issues with some of their meetings, and it has to do with also relating, are they a club? Are they part of our board responsibilities? But I think the point, I had a discussion with some more historical community council. Basically, our objective is for them to be transparent and have community involvement, that their classification isn't necessarily as important as the board. They're part of a board policy intended to have community involvement, student voice. As part of that transparency, there's some question about, are they subject to New Hampshire right to know because they're part of a board policy? It was suggested to me that rather than pursue that at the expense of it, it'd be easier for us just to go back to community council. I'm going to list the things that I've seen as the rep. Meetings without 24-hour public notice, meetings without a quorum, votes without a quorum, meetings where the public could not attend. They had a meeting during Orange, or the 2 weeks that we had, public could not come into the building. I would like to motion to assign Maddie, our representative, to go back to community council, check the bylaws for these specific issues of transparency, and report back to us, or to the board. I will be here, but on recommendations on how in the future these items can be resolved and avoided. Like, make sure they have a quorum, to make sure because they have students leave during the meeting, and from my training on New Hampshire right to know, like once you don't have a quorum, the meeting's over. Like they're not really tracking it, and then
So you're asking for clarification on whether they're subject to right to know because of how they fall under a board policy.
well, I don't
Need
think
that clarification.
you know, if we did a legal check, that would cost money. It's easier just to say what we're looking for is transparency and community involvement. What we're looking for, Maddie can check the bylaws of community council. She can talk to the executive board, and she can report back on how they can follow these practices.
Second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion, a second, discussion.
Think you're onto something, Laura, whether it is required by law or not, it's a good practice to have as a governing body. And if you're following that practice, then if you are in fact subject to it, then you'll be in the clear. And I think that would go a long way for community council to be taken seriously as it wants to be, I think, and as it should be. I mean, it's no small thing that of all of the student clubs, athletics, extracurricular activities, there's only, other than administration, there's only one other seat at this board table that has a right to speak in every meeting, and that's community council. So it is no small thing. I think we should do what we can do to help them realize their place and exercise their powers that are bestowed to them in the policies that we have. And if we don't like what they're doing or need to change it, then we need to change our policies and we can have that discussion at that time with something specific and actionable to modify in the future. So that's why I'm in support of the motion.
Any other discussion? Laura, I raise your hand.
I also wanted to say that, although we did have some feedback that Mike Berry was not supporting community council as a club, I wanted you to know that him and his administration all brought very important things to community council for them to discuss and be a part of the process of Souhegan. So there might be a misunderstanding there, but I feel like his actions are clearly supportive of community council, and I wanted to speak that.
Thank you. Steve?
So I'm not sure that community council is subject to the right to know law, but I think as Laura and John have said, we model the important features of the right to know, the whole right to know law, but particularly our day-to-day operations get to the most important features of it. Notice, transparency, and it's only been 12 years since I've read the Community Council bylaws, so I don't have a copy. So I don't know if they're in the bylaws, but if they're not, they should be, and if they are, they should be following those modeling those essential attributes in their operations as well, not because the law requires it, because it's a good way to run a deliberate body. And these rules about quorum and so on go back from Roberts to Mason to earlier rules. It's just good practice. And if we're going to do what we do, which I fully support, which is give students a strong and meaningful voice in the operation of the school, then we should also enable them to, just as the art department is doing, live in the real world, and live by the rules of the real world. And that gives added credibility and credence to their decisions.
Anybody else? All right, so the motion, Laura, do you want to repeat your motion? So
A motion for Maddie, our representative from community council, to check the community council bylaws and report back on recommendations on how to maintain transparency and community involvement. Shall we list the 4 items?
Yes.
yes, please.
Okay, including meetings without a 24-hour public notice, meetings where the public could not attend, meetings without a quorum, and votes without quorum.
Okay, so if there is no more discussion, let's take a vote. Those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? None opposed. That motion passes. So yeah, so Maddie, if there's any question or anything, please reach out to me and I'm happy to work with you and we'll work through it together. Because yeah, we appreciate the work that community council does and want to make sure that we're there to support you. Okay, on to the consent agenda. Do we need to go down one by one to see if there's anything that needs to be pulled? Does that make sense? Okay, how about we do, are there any questions on item number 1, draft minutes? Number 2, for the January 12th draft minutes. And then item number 3 with the draft minutes that are after the public hearing. No, excellent. And January 27th draft minutes.
Yes.
You want to pull that one? Okay. I think that was that one might have said, it had some Title 4 instead of Title 9. And you have some other.
I want to support the consent agenda, but I want to abstain from voting on the events.
Okay, so we can pull just that particular list. Okay. Any questions on the budget transfers, number 5, 6, 7, and 8? Oh, Laura?
I have some questions about them.
on that, about those. Why don't you ask your questions, because then we might be able to go ahead and pass.
Okay. One was to move one of his transfers was to move money from the person that maintained the theater and did all the electronic setup for community events to the theater teacher position to pay for her salary. Yet I still see, I guess, part-time people coming in. I don't see her in there doing the setup for community events in the theater. And where is his salary coming from, or his,
Yeah,
we haven't transferred the responsibility, yet we're transferring all the money to pay for that service to this teacher.
so he's not a teacher anymore. So when Mr. St. Ange comes in, he's a consultant, so he's paid out of a different pool of money.
Okay,
So he's no longer a teacher, but there's a few times he comes in to set up for events, and he's paid as a consultant for those events.
is there still money left in that account if we're taking the money that was his and giving it to the course now, drama?
He doesn't work for the district as a teacher anymore. So this is just a reclassification. So when he comes in, occasionally to work, he's as a consultant, but the idea is that those responsibilities are moving to this new teacher.
Okay. When will that occur and how much is in that account to cover, since now we have two jobs we're paying for?
Yeah, it's transitioning out of his responsibility to the new teacher. So there just was a gap in knowledge where we needed to transfer that information over to this new person. But it is on a limited basis and it's coming from a different account. I don't have that account handy, but I can certainly email that to you and give you information on funds. Happy to do that.
Just if we're transferring his money, she should be either doing that job or we need to consider, finding the money elsewhere, or, I'm just.
So the money that he's doing is found elsewhere. So this was just a reclassification.
So she is doing theater work. I think that's maybe the confusion you're thinking of.
And she has been on site a few times.
Okay, so the goal in the long run is that she will be doing all of this stuff.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
The reclassification for the domain leader, 50%. Reallocating the function codes. Which domain leader is this on page 32 of the agenda?
Yeah, so this is the FY22 budget, not FY23, so it's the existing domain leaders. So it's a reclassification that should have happened already this year, but it just didn't happen when the budget was set up. So it's reclassifying their work to 50% to regular ed and 50% to educational improvement, which is the function code 2210.
They were originally only budgeted for in what?
They were in fully in admin.
Admin, and then so it's transferring it over, the 50%, there's two of them as student teacher.
So it's just correcting what actually how it should have been set up in the beginning of the year.
So we've already approved this, but we're approving it for the budget transfer in this.
We're approving the budget transfer because when they budgeted for it, it wasn't in the two different buckets, it was only in one bucket. So now we have to approve the transfer, show that it's in one bucket.
Yeah. Okay. And it will be easier if we make the correction now, so that it will show up for FY23, and when budget committees are looking at it, it doesn't cause confusion. So we wanted to make the correction this year.
Okay, no, we've already approved the concepts. Yep, but this is just the,
The mechanics of it.
okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Any others?
I have one more.
Okay, so we have a question on the budget transfer. It's okay. That's fine.
There's a budget transfer of 45,000 from one code to the next that goes from administration salaries to campus coordinator. So which admin salary was that?
That's the campus coordinator. So it's going from admin to guidance, which is where it more appropriately lies.
Okay, and the administrator salaries that it's taking from.
It's just a reclassification.
Okay. All right, well, I remembered there was we were replacing.
Yeah, I think they were originally budgeted for in administration, but they really, that position really belongs in the guidance department and not in administration. So that's the reclassification, just moving the position over.
Just changing the function code.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. And no other questions on the budget transfers? Okay, any question on the treasurer's report? I have one on that. Amy, can we go look at it? It's just, there's some old outstanding checks from like March and January 2021. We can just look at clearing those.
It's still checks.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
I know it takes time.
that takes time from our office staff to reach out, but,
Yes.
which they do, but I can certainly, make sure those are cleared
I
out.
just think if we get closer to June.
Yeah.
Nice to have those.
Absolutely.
Okay. So those are that's 1 through 9. There are the 2 draft policies, GBEBB and GBEBD. Do we have any discussion on either of those? These are the ones that were written that we did the first read back in January. So we had a couple edits, so this is with edits. Steve?
I'll wrestle with it myself rather than ask Steve. to fix it. So we had a first reading. We made some amendments to the first reading. It was like 6 years ago, but it wasn't. It was one month ago. I sent those over to PPC and said, second reading's coming up, February 21st. Be there or be square. And PPC has no additional comments on these. So we've done our statutory duty to receive PPC comments. They got lots of notice. We've reviewed it. I think these
We've
are
got
ready
a
to
few
go.
months at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm glad those are at least put through there. So thank you for that. Any other discussion on either of those policies? Okay.
Just certainly not a textual comment, but just the formatting of the GBEBB is a little wonky, and it doesn't look like our normal policies, implementation where there's extra returns, there's partial underlinings here and there. So is that the expectation that would be cleaned up or professional?
Abby is wonderful.
I
Abby
do
won't
this
let it
time.
go without using it.
Just wanted to say that out loud.
Okay, seeing no other comments, how about a motion to accept consent agenda items 1 through 3 and 5 through 11. Tim is making a motion, Christie seconding. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, then a consent agenda item number 4. Can I have a motion to approve? Tim is approving, Christie second. Those in favor? Those opposed? Those abstain? 2 abstain. Okay. Reports received. We have a principal's report. I'm assuming there might be some questions. Hey, Mike? Thank you. Anyone have any comments, questions on principal's report? Laura?
I'll let someone else speak first.
Anybody else? Tim?
I'll try since I don't usually talk. So I know you've been showing some of the stuff obviously for so far this year. So in particular about the staff attendance. Talks about, we got 5 months of data on here. And the title is maybe what's messing me up. It says staff attendance, but then you talk about partial or full day requests. I'm assuming requests of not being here. Is that true? Yeah. So it's, maybe we need to look at that differently. To me, staff attendance means, number of staff in attendance, not asking to not be in attendance. So, and maybe you need to look at it, similar to how you show your student attendance, right? You can break it down by grade level if you like, or just overall score. It doesn't matter to me personally, but if you break it down on a monthly basis, this many teachers, teacher days were in, this many teacher days were out. That way we can start to see if there's trends, and what those trends may be. That'd be helpful to me personally. Other than that, fine.
Anybody else?
Yeah, actually, I have the same question. Staff attendance, so thank you. Yeah. A little more information might be more.
And I'm assuming that staff attendance includes like teachers who've been out for COVID. We had a number of teachers out, I know, during January, so that could be why it's a little higher as well. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Do you want to?
John, can
John
Just
have
a-
one?
Just a thank you for keeping the language of the strategic vision front, number one, front first and foremost. I really appreciate that. To me, it really guides looking at what the priorities are, making choices about where to spend your time, and it helps me see like, okay, any given proposal connects well to our strategic vision. That's going to be a lot higher support from my perspective, knowing that you connected it that way. So it's not the first time we've seen it, but you're keeping that up, and I really appreciate it.
Laura?
The moving of ThankFest to April from February, I just wanted to point out that the student who is in charge of making this decision is a sophomore, and one of the disadvantages of having it in April is that that's right at the same time we may be testing, prom, and the junior JLP, the research paper, in April. So the students voted to put it there, but I just wanted to point out there are a few disadvantages to having it in April. Maybe you might consider in future years if it's possible to take it back to February. How did the progress reports? I know that there's a paragraph here for semester one. I really appreciate the detail that the Dean of Students or the Dean of Faculty included, but how smoothly did that go down?
I think anything to do involved with grading and reporting does not go nearly as smooth as administration would like it, teachers would like it, students would like it, parents would like it. It's something that is a priority for us as an organization to work on. There's a lot of smart, capable people working on how to make sure that grading and reporting is communicated efficiently and accurately. So I think as we transition from Empower to Power Teacher Pro, we've navigated that and some bumps. Overall, it's not perfect.
did have some feedback that the domain leaders were very helpful.
Yeah, they worked really hard. And there's like 3 or 4 people that worked really hard at creating reporting and making sure people communicate. And that would be, to the team faculty, Dan Curran, to the domain leaders, Dan Swift, and Mr. Charbonneau, and then Galen Tremblay in her role as they work with counselors. We then work with teachers and students with this. So it's a journey. We'll get there.
That's a question, Laura.
Christy had her hand up too, so since I already talked about it, we'll let her go.
It's not even a big one. Under number 7, updates from athletes, when I hit the link on this letter, it's going to a dead site for me. So I would love to see what the Souhegan athletes are doing. I've been looking for like something to share about some of their success lately. I was like, oh yes, we have a website, but it didn't work for me.
I know we have.
Yeah, it's worked in the past.
Yeah.
I just want to echo what Stephanie said before, congratulating the teams that have done well lately. I think it's outstanding. I was in Connecticut this past weekend when my son, who's a former basketball player, ran over to me and said, "Hey, they just won the D2 state championship." So that was a very exciting thing for him personally. Also really great to see that there's I see some reference to unified, says unified champion school. So and then it says there's like a truncated sentence. So not sure exactly what is trying to be said here. However, I'm assuming that you guys are establishing some kind of unified teams in some sports.
Yeah, I'll answer that or speak to that. It's something that I've been a long part of some Special Olympics, and there's been an interest here for a little while to become a member of the NHIA unified division, and so we're going to move forward with that in basketball and track and soccer, I believe, for the next school year. And it's a competitive league. We play other schools. Kelly Braley and some students here got that off the ground as they start to do some of the work around getting the plunge. And so that's really exciting. That for us was a previous, and a lot of schools participate in really powerful experience that we create for students and families, and that's really what we're going to do there. We're really excited, and as far as the athletic success and co-curricular success, there's a lot of good things happening here. There's a lot of good students who walk through the front door and they're motivated and they have their areas of interest, whether it's classes like Stephanie Fritz to athletics to some of the co-curricular, some of the AP classes, and there's a lot of motivated kids, and there's a lot of good things happening. And it's very easy in public school to harp in on all the some of the negative things, but the hundreds of good things that happen here is something that we try to focus on. And we talked a little bit about the basketball, and they're high profile right now. Like I spoke earlier, like the bowling team had their state championship, and that was probably one of the things I've done in a while. Like weirdly intense. Weirdly intense. And so that was fun. But I think what we see is the commonality between like what I saw with the bowling and basketball. The culture around the team is really healthy. The players and the students hang out, like each other, want to play hard for each other. And then the coaches, they coach them hard. I mean, they have a real interest and real passion about making good. And if we notice some of the successes, those are some of the commonalities. So we're having lots of good things happening.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm a huge proponent of the whole unified sports division, if you want to call it that. If anybody may have seen, it was a month or so ago, and actually Nashua North, their unified basketball team got into top 10 plays in ESPN. So it was really cool to see, and made me, when I saw this, I was psyched to see that we were moving in that direction as well. So that's great. Thank you.
Great. So the one thing I want to ask, how did remote learning day go? I know it was kind of like a jump in 2 feet all at once. How did that go for everybody?
I think, overall, it was relatively smooth. We put a little bit of data in there, we were pretty proactive in that as administrators and administrative assistants to follow up directly with students and families throughout the day, throughout period by period. We had a good plan, a realistic plan that I think students made sense to them. Most of them, and it was a combination of being present and then being able to work on your own. People did well planning for it. We spotlight, advertise it, and kind of set it up like, hey, this is how it's going to go. It's not, doesn't replace in person.
Right.
But I thought overall it was a good use of our time.
As people are asking Mike for more information for the principal's report, it floated across my mind that almost every month we say, good stuff, give us more, change this, change that. And you've done that. Every month you've responded to our request for information. And that always hasn't happened in the past. So I want to say I appreciate your helping us out here. Thank you.
Laura, other questions?
I do want to say that I appreciate the report and I like the addition, having different paragraphs for different sections of your administration. I really appreciate the free SAT prep for all interested juniors. I think that's a great start for this year. And as Christine Landhill knows, I've been a fan of this for quite some time. And I'm glad that it's finally been able to come into place.
Thank you. There's a lot of good people working hard at that. Anna Curran and Karen Fiernas work together with the domain leaders, to organize it. We all believe that we should offer it for free. And I don't think there's no one that thinks different. And we all believe that students, that's an interest of yours, to score well on that, you should take advantage of that. And we made it very available, as you can see, before and after school, twice a week, so people could fit it into their schedules. Now, don't get me wrong, getting here at 7:15, all of a sudden seems really early for people sometimes. And so we have that, but we also have the after school sessions. It is a start.
I think it's fantastic.
I echo that.
And especially the SAT will be digital this year. So having students practice it can only help them since it's a brand new format for them. I had one last question, and that was this peer tutoring, the Granite State Sexual Violence Week. I'm all for healthy relationships and promoting those, but how is that a school-wide emphasis? Explain to me.
And it was under Respect Week, and it was put on at, as it says in there, partnered with Bridges, New Hampshire, and it was under healthy relationships, and that's the emphasis that we took on healthy relationships between peer-to-peer, healthy relationships between adult, parents and children, friends and friends. And each day had a theme, and she coordinated with students to put on it and kind of talk a little bit about it. And Spotlight Advisory did some activities to just basically try to promote healthy relationships throughout that teenagers kind of encounter during their teenage years. And had a partner with Bridges that presented to the student body briefly on Monday, and then was here to kind of run a table and talk to them about these things and talk about what it should look like and had some information for people if they wanted more information. And that's really kind of what.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Thank you for all the hard work, and thank you administration as well. All right, January facilities updates. And the reports received. Anyone have any comments, questions?
Anyone from the public hasn't looked at these facility update pieces of our agendas, you really should do that. They're a testament to our facilities director. Very demonstrated progress on maintaining what we have, illustrated photos, put things in context, and they speak for themselves, which is why it's not a long discussion item at our meetings. And we wish him well to continue his good work. I wish him well. I can't speak for the rest of us.
Essentially, like what John said, Roger and his team do a fabulous job doing all the facilities work that they've been doing. I'm going to take a slightly different look at it, and that is, some of the things on here. I'd like kind of, if there's a way to kind of pare this down to like an executive summary. These are the major things that we're working on. To install a filter in our room, that's great. But if it needs to be done, this should be part of what they do, right? And I'm sure it is. But list out every single thing. That's kind of like when you're working on a government contract, and you have to write down every minute that you're working on a particular project. I think it's just there's minimal information that's gleaned from that minute level of detail. We kind of like to look at these are again, this is my opinion. Everybody else might say that they'd rather have all the big list, but regular items that they do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, go ahead and do them. But if it's a major thing, hey, we finally installed that sign today, or whatever, that type of stuff. That's more major stuff. The things that we are putting money aside to get done, those are the things obviously we want to hear more about. Not to say that again, some of this stuff is not worth it, because it is obviously, it's helping keep this building
A
running.
different type of report.
Yeah, sure. So, thank you.
Yeah, I can work with Roger to try to pare it down and hit the high points, and probably less work for him, so.
And I love the pictures, but the pictures are great.
Okay.
Before and after.
All right.
It's great.
Yeah, pictures, yes, executive summary.
Exactly.
I think what it is he's proven himself at this point that
Yeah.
we're no question, because he is real. Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna just disagree. I mean, have an executive summary too, if you want, or bold, maybe something that's a bit of a major, non-expected maintenance thing, but this is only a page, okay? And it's bullet points. It's not sentences and paragraphs. And he's probably keeping this list anyway in his daily journal. So for him to put it in this format, I don't think is a big ask. I mean, I'm asking him to do it. He's just volunteering this. I think what it does for us is it proves every month that he's doing what he's supposed to do. And your trust is only as good as it was last earned. So by him continuing to demonstrate that he's doing what he's doing, and you can see, the level of detail, and it covers all different kinds of things. I think there's value there. And I would encourage him to keep this format, and if there's something else to add to it that maybe would give us some perspective about what's routine versus non-routine, that could also be some value. That's my opinion.
Take that back. Steve. Steve.
I'll add my 2 cents. And I just want to reflect on not the level of minutia here, which is detailed, but the underlying philosophy that this reflects, which is, I know from talking to the custodial staff, that all the maintenance actions now being logged in an electronic system with the world's worst name, so I won't say it. Amy will say it, school dude. And this is a wonderful change in practice from what happened before. Maintenance would happen or not, and the records would be, I don't know what they were, but my allergies written on a slip of paper and thrown in a file cabinet So now all requests for services are logged, and then when they're completed, they're logged. So we know that, oh heck, the O-rings were replaced in February of 22. And we've never had that level of detail before. So whether someone figures out a way to add another field about reportable to the board or not reportable to the board or not, the software, I'm sure this is like press the button, get the report done, which you'd rather have them doing than writing out a long report and not fixing things. That's for you guys to argue about next month.
Yes, Amy.
So how about I take all of this feedback to Roger, we have discussion, and we'll come forth with some sort of revised format next month, and you can let us know if that works.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Sounds
Okay. Laura?
My question, you have entry cards for the doors. Are those entry cards for staff only? Or just, there was some talk of students perhaps getting entry cards?
Just that.
Just staff, okay. And my next question, there was flooding in the annex, and I wanted to know how that went for cleanup, and also there's toilet damage, and I was wondering, is that normal wear and tear, or was there vandalism like the TikTok issues that were in the fall?
Yeah, I would have to,
Mike answer that?
maybe. Otherwise, I can check with Roger, report back to the board.
I think the flooding was heating system.
That was the one where it froze. That's the one you're talking
Because
about,
the
yeah.
valve.
Yes.
So they- And they closed down their classrooms for a couple of days. They get in and clean it up.
Okay, that's good.
Bathrooms, I'm not sure what the plan is.
Okay. Next report received is the acting superintendent report. Steve, is there anything you would like to highlight?
Just a couple of tidbits. Really enjoyed the tours of all the CTE opportunities. Actually, the day I was at Webb Palmer, a new calf was born. So I got to see that, take some pictures, but I got a chance to get to all the CT centers and look forward to working with Karen and Mike. We're trying to do some interviewing with some kids and trying to make sure everyone is aware of the tremendous opportunities. Milford, Nashville North, South, and as well as Albert, Webb Palmer. So some really good stuff there. Enjoyed that. Just there's a little tidbits about what's going on.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for the acting superintendent? I want to keep calling him superintendent. Acting.
No, we
is
like
so-
acting.
We like acting.
Acting is a good thing.
Laura, saw your hand go up.
I'll let you lead, Stephanie.
Oh, well, I was just,
That sentence that says employees are voting for a union.
yes. Is there, I mean,
So really, that was
anything you want to discuss or?
FYI. And just to update the board a little bit of process, a little bit, my understanding from talking with some faculty, this is not the first time that this has been discussed in this school. And we certainly look forward for the process to work its way through. It is very much a Public Employees Labor Relations Board governed process, working through, with the staff. And it's really just for, my goal is just to update the board and where we're at.
Yeah, about the potential for a new bargaining unit. I mean, what I learned when we had the summer work about consolidating our districts, that, the bottom line is the labor decides what the labor wants to do. And that's not either an administrative function there, there's no board function there. And that's fine. They're going to do what they feel like they need to do. At the same time, I wonder, maybe you could help me understand, or us all understand, at what point along the way does it make sense, or is it warranted or proper to have conversations about the motivations behind? Is there something that, for example, that is whether we can react to or anticipate for the future? Is there an unmet need? Is is it something beyond our control? And if there's actions to be taken at some point, the earlier you can get on the conversation train, the better chance you have at finding, a consensus about whatever the future might hold. And when we were talking about consolidation, and that, of course, that conversation went away. It was, before it went away, it was, well, if we're going to go forward with this, we need to start talking with our labor now to see how we could actually get together and make those conversations and identify hurdles and all of these things. So all of that is a long way to say, I would be eager to know when it would be appropriate for the board to be engaged in the conversation.
I think we can certainly get some other opinions, but I think once the process takes its course, they have every, as you said, John, they have every opportunity to organize and do what they need to do. I think see what happens through this process, but I think after it concludes, one way we're going to definitely have discussions, and if it happens the other way, we can certainly talk more about what was the impetus and see what is in our control or outside of control. But I think it's to respect their decisions, as you said. I think we'll let the process go. And then afterwards, when it concludes, we can work on having conversations to see if there's anything that we could do to resolve anything. But I think the process needs to run its course.
Fair.
Laura?
I strongly disagree. I think as a board, we have the only school in the state without a union. We've had that for 30 years. And I think as a board, we should take immediate action and go in a non-public emergency meeting or whatever's necessary to have dialogue to find out what led to this. What conditions, because according to Steve, he hasn't been voicing any complaints from the PPC. So I'd like to know what conditions and culture or problems are there that led to this result.
The concern is the process needs to be clear of coercion and influence. I would hate to anything be misconstrued as interfering with that process. And there are other schools in New Hampshire that do not have.
Okay.
Disregard the interim superintendent's advice. So over the years, I've been on PPC since 2004. And so I've gone through a couple of waves of where the staff has talked about utilization in the past. And as Laura alluded to, going down one level. So there are always individual staff members who have problems with something happening in the school, and that gets resolved through internal processes, and things are fine. Occasionally, staff members might be frustrated by the resolutions that occur. And PPC, while it's not in its charter, has been the unofficial relief valve for those concerns. So PPC has heard when staff thought things weren't going well consistently, not just an occasional, we don't agree with that decision or whatever. There's been no hint of steam pressure at PPC leading up to this. So my first thought is, despite all the rumors we hear about dissatisfaction and so on, the nature of PPC, as we would have heard about that stuff, was a big concern. It was concerning a lot of staff. I think the impetus of this might be a combination of some internal concerns, but also external events that are beyond our control as a district. So certainly, as part of PPC, we always want to hear from staff and try to right wrongs if something is systematically wrong. But I don't think this rise is because of that. I know that it's because of something that we can fix. But that's, again, one person's opinion. It has no impact on the complete Labor Relations Board process. Please, God.
I think maybe that would be a good first start, would be to confirm that, given the history, as Laura raised, and then no disrespect to you, Mr. Chamberlain, at all. But if it is such a new phenomenon, and there has been no pre-signaling through our PPC, that is a little bit of a concern. And so a basic question to say, like, is this external, as Steve has intimated, suggested, or is this internal? I mean, that would go a long way to just having a level of comfort. It's a little bit of a freak out to see that without context. And the only thing external that I know that has really affected teachers in a meaningful way is the divisive concepts law, that you might be freaking teachers out that they could lose their certificate depending on what opinions are or aren't shared in their classrooms. I could see that being an external force that could potentially trigger something like this. But without a confirmation, it makes me nervous. I mean, they're our most valued asset for student success. And if they are concerned about something and we don't know it, and we don't have any ability to help them, and they're out there alone helping themselves, and I wouldn't want them to know that they're just on an island all by themselves.
Other questions? I actually have one. Steve, could you talk a little bit more about the mentorship induction process? What does it look like? What's being, it sounds like it might be being revised or looked at again? Or?
Sure, we've had as I talked about, this year, we've had a more defined, Christine and I worked together in the summer about a very strong mentorship program, a little bit more defined here at Souhegan. Worked with Travis and Kim and Mike and selecting mentors, and just we're in the process of just getting feedback on how we can get better. It's a little bit more formal this year, and so we're going to start a little earlier this year. But the effort in mentorship and induction of staff is a critical piece. We want to make sure we're, especially at Souhegan, which has very unique approaches, and its own glossary, its own terms. So I've appreciated the work with Kim and Travis very much, and the new staff. And something you'll hear from me always is continual improvement, how we can, in the next iteration, can get better. And I've just appreciated the work very much this year with teacher leaders, the new staff, Mike, Christine, developing a strong mentorship program as part of our induction.
That's great. And I know one of the teachers is a fairly new teacher. Pat's only been around for a little while, and Kim's been around for longer, so it's great to see the two working together.
It is, and they can have their experience, and their strong memories of how to conduct into a very comprehensive. This is, there are really unique attributes of the school that coming from another school like I have, it's a lot to learn, and so that process is incredibly important at all schools, but I think really, really important here at Souhegan.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, next on our agenda is the presentation on the 2022 program of studies.
Yes.
Mike and Dana, really?
Yeah, as they come forward, I just would like to thank them both for, as I wrote a little bit about in just my notes, what a comprehensive and collaborative process, significant amount of work, and it really does dovetail on, just for me, a founding belief that everything we do, we have to get continual improvement, whether it's the student handbook that we've done some iteration of, and now it's up to the program of studies. And this is, early in the iterative process. But Dana and Mike, thank you so much for your work.
Appreciate that, Steve, and we would agree with you that the program of studies is an opportunity for us as an organization to help students and families plan on how they're going to use Souhegan to move on to the next phase of their life. And high school is a complex place, and there are lots of options, and you can individualize and personalize your experience. And so when we talk about that, our program of studies, is part of that personal success plan. It's part of that individual plan. It's the pathways to graduation. It's the courses you want to take. It's the teachers that you want to be in classrooms with, that you don't teach those courses. It's an opportunity to brand your school and use it as a public relations tool. And so for for myself, this is our first real opportunity this year to kind of come together and look at it. And one of the things that I looked at, that this school district hasn't really had a program of studies presentation before. And so what we wanted to do are in recent times. And so what, I think it's good educational practice and business to update the school board on, program of studies and some of the changes that we are making within the programming and the course scheduling process. So students keep up with, society, keep up with expectations, keep up with change. And so it was really important for me and as the principal to do that. And that's why we scheduled this, originally scheduled for January 12th. Before the process, we kind of got kicked back into February because of events. Really fortunate for the opportunity to present tonight. And with that, I had not as much to do with it after I said, hey, this is what we'd like to do, and kind of partnered with Dana and Karen and some other people in the steering committee of teachers to kind of pull it off. And so I'd like her to talk a little bit about the process that they went through, and you highlight a couple of the bigger changes, that we have, and then field some questions.
So thanks. So it was a nice intro from Steve about how really in education, we're talking about always innovating and always looking for the next thing. And so we really do see this update as a first step towards some other things that we know need to happen. But in talking about updating program studies, it was important for us to have in mind the different stakeholders that would be accessing this document and try to make it as user-friendly for all as possible. So not just students and their families, but also their counselors and also teachers and post-secondary institutions as well. So what you have before you is a comprehensive update, the first of its kind in more than a decade, so I'm told. In the past, we have undertaken some updates, but they've kind of been a little piecemeal. We'll do a department here, a department there, or a section here, a section there. And this time we really did go through the whole thing from start to finish to make updates. To see the work boiled down, so I think I wrote 7 bullet points, feels a little underwhelming because it was all hands on deck. While I feel like I facilitated the work, it would not have been possible without the staff steering reps who facilitated the work with the department, the teachers who all had eyes on this, and our counselors who had eyes on this. This was a real big team effort for us. And there were lots of different pieces. So we reviewed just to make sure that we were accurate in our descriptions, right? So that our current realities were being reflected in our course descriptions and our course offerings. We followed a new course proposal process this year, which asked folks to look at some data that we gathered from students on their interests in our various subjects. That was the first time that we did that, and we're looking forward to improving that process again next year. Staff steering members edited and provided their feedback, and then we were able to review with students. So we're really excited about this. You'll see that I broke down the changes kind of based on the different sections. So at the top was the programmatic and organizational changes. Most notably, it's no longer in the website form. Travis Mason and I, in our capacity as staff steering co-facilitators, did a pretty big review across the state about what did people have and what did we find most helpful in interacting with and why. And really, we liked the idea of something that was easily searchable. And we weren't getting that with our current or our previous website. You couldn't Control F and find something, right? And now you can. And things are clicked and links are clickable. And so again, that accessibility is really important. So that kind of highlights some of the programmatic and organizational changes. In terms of our course offerings, we're really excited about some new course offerings for next year. Notably, the data science course in our math department, we're really excited. We have been offering a statistics and an AP statistics class for a couple years now, and are finding that there's a lot of overlap between those classes. And so this data science class is going to be able to offer an opportunity for students who are not looking for an AP experience, but also broadening their horizons by dipping their toes into a lot of other things. We've made sure to we made sure that this class is going to still be an on-ramp for students who are looking to explore things like nursing or psychology, so they really would be able to have that rich experience with statistics in case they didn't want to take the advanced placement option. We are also offering Theater 1 next year, Theater 1 Page Stage. This came out of our student interest survey that students are really looking for more course offerings in our performing arts, specifically in theater arts. So we're very excited about that. You'll notice that we are reviving some previously offered courses in our wellness program to offer students more selection in terms of what they can take so that they can stay engaged in wellness and physical education courses throughout their 4 years if that's something that they'd like to do. So the High Ropes Adventure and the yoga and strength classes are back in. And then we're adding a new strength and endurance class, which is really exciting. Another thing that we did within the wellness department is really some targeted marketing for our Saber Eats class, because we got a lot of feedback from kids that they were missing kind of a traditional facts class and nutrition class. So we're hopeful that that's going to be kind of revived. In terms of support courses, this year we have Saber Flex courses for our 9th and 10th graders. As you know, there's required courses kind of meant to shore up some potential gaps in learning, to help support students develop in their student skills, build back that academic stamina. And so next year we're updating that. We're updating Saber Flex for 9th graders to be a required class, just as it is right now, but have it be a 0.5 credit bearing class for the full year. Right now it is not a credit bearing class, as there's no formal assessments, things tied to the class. But now that we've done it once through almost, we have a good understanding of what that class can be for students. And so it will be kind of partially focused on those student skills, developing their self-directed learning skills, and then partially kind of a directed study hall where kids will be able to get support. So that's why a half a credit for the full year, because it will be a full year's worth of assessed courses. And then we're also excited to be offering Saber Flex as an optional kind of independent directed study for students in grades 10 through 12. This will really allow us to maximize the supports that we're able to provide for students in our academic support classes. So we're excited about that. And then we did update the career and technical opportunities section, kind of along the lines of what Steve said. We want to make that information as accessible as possible for students. So linking the brochures, making sure we're talking about transportation, if we're able to provide it, things of that nature. So those are some of the highlights. Certainly not all of it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, let's open it up. Who has questions? Laura?
Please, Maddie. The Saber Eats teacher, we just finished passing that FY23 budget. Where is this teacher coming from?
It would come out from the wellness department. That's where that class has been housed previously.
Okay, but we don't have a teacher there. Would it be one of the PE teachers?
Yes.
Would be replaced? Or do they just?
So let me clarify, everything that we're in here, we will do with the existing budget.
Okay. But are you eliminating the PE teacher or you?
No, in the past, that class was taught by a current PE teacher. So we're looking to potentially be able to continue that.
We had a part-time person.
Previously to this.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? No.
First question is this, this is, as far as you guys, this is done, packaged and ready for, it's like, okay, we're done for now. But it's a breathing, living, organic document to be continuously updated and not another 10 years goes by, I presume.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's encouraging. So, well done. It's the table of contents. It's pretty comprehensive. I want to offer constructive feedback maybe for version 2. Okay. Student services is one page. Page 19, course registration and scheduling practices. So very administrative, student service. And I think that that maybe is a part of the table of contents you could really expand and tie into the strategic vision. You know, it's not just course registration and scheduling, it's really course planning over the course of your high school career. And that maybe ties into guidance, maybe that backfills with advisory to the advisor to check in on goal setting and whether they're met. Like that's a real student service. And some of the things that we've seen in our agenda packet about the SAT prep, the principal's report, that's a great student service that would fit neatly, it seems to me, in that portion of your table of contents. AP testing support, dual enrollment, tuition support maybe could fit in there. You know, the concepts of mastery learning, like the idea that you could accelerate, you could use a non-bearing saber flex time and actually use your in-school experience to leverage the power of a VLAX course that could accelerate you through to another level in terms of your academic advancement. Just having the awareness that that's an option, it would be very valuable to a lot of students and their families to even just, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have even thought, like that's so cool, we could do that. The power of what could families consider doing over the summer to achieve similar outcomes. You know, that helps with the affordable next step, that helps with the mastery learning, that really, it gives a lot of credence and the anchoring adults, whoever they are going to really understand what's going on. It really sets its foundation for goal setting and follow up and all of that good stuff that we're trying to do in other areas. And that's the ones I thought, oh, student services, that all kind of ties into that. So that's my feedback too, is maybe look at expanding that to include some of those concepts that already exist. We're doing them, we're working on them, we're building them. You know, individualized learning and learning plan pilot, for example, is underway and so on. So that's my feedback.
No, thank you very much. These are some really great ideas. Some of them sound structural. We have some of that information under the essential information. It does feel, now that you're saying it, kind of maybe better housed in one spot, but there's definitely room to include some of the other connections that you just pointed out. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. You're welcome.
Laura?
I did want to say this is fantastic, and the fact that you have revamped this part of our curriculum as well as the handbook in 1 year, that's an awful lot of work, and I really appreciate all the organization that you brought. I have one question about Saber Flex, the half credit, is that pass fail?
Yes.
Okay, it was the presentation, it was a work study practice.
Right. So students do receive work study practice scores in there, but those do not roll up into like a course.
Okay.
Reported separately. Yeah.
And if you do it in 10th grade, if you take it in 10th grade, it is not a credit at all.
Correct, because at that point we're no longer doing assessing. We're really just supporting students to do the work that they're already doing assigned.
Okay, so if you're in 10th grade, can you have a free period, or do you have to have Saber Flex?
You can have a free period.
Okay.
In 10th grade. We would recommend that you not have a free period in 10th grade. I think at the top of I want to find it so that I don't misspeak. At the top, we talk about the kinds of credits. This is an area that I think we need to continue to work on. As I said in my introduction, we have to take a look at our graduation requirements and how many credits we're requiring of students. And so this falls under it. Students in 9th and 10th grade are required to carry a full schedule of classes, including off-team courses and a variety of departments. So they would need to take something. It could be this Saber Flex class, it could be a VLAX class, it could be a DLO, but they need to have something. Okay.
Can I ask one quick one? So yeah, again, I mentioned this at the SAU. The reason I had seen the program studies, my daughter was registering for classes her senior year, and so I had a chance to see that as one of the first go arounds. And I was like, oh, this is nice. It really is so much easier to use and to understand and to explain things. So that is great. Can you explain what there were? I'm assuming there were presentations to each class about the program of studies. Did that include, yeah, so I don't know, what exactly, like, did it include any presentation to parents? I mean, I know what the juniors, or their, rising seniors receive, but I'm not sure what other grade levels receiving. Did they receive information about CTE as well, the parents as well as the students?
So every class had a structured events scheduled through the counseling department. So they had full meetings where they did present the program studies, talk about notable changes. Everybody, they went over the course selection process in terms of the logistics of how to do it online, followed up with their advisories, and then every kid, which is outstanding, something that we do here that I do not think is typical, is every child sits knee to knee with their counselor to review their courses that they selected for next year. So that has also happened. That's still happening through the end of this week with the students, with I think the current juniors. In terms of how this was presented to families, it was included in one of the nights that the counselors have with families, and it is part of our upcoming 8th grade parent night. It was sent out in our parent newsletter as well as the CTE opportunities. But one of the things that I think that you're hitting on, related and not, is that I really hope that we can continue to work on our partnerships with families and how we're communicating with families. I think you've seen some of that with Say Respond, you've seen some of that with the newsletter, but stuff like this is also really important.
Yeah, no, great. Much improved. So thanks so much for all of everyone's work.
Yeah, through the newsletter and email blast, we that parents have the options of parent course selection nights if they chose to come in, and the counseling office ran that. Yeah, over Zoom, and not as heavily attended, and that's something to reflect on about that process. And I think you'll see some more opportunities in combination with the master schedule, with the strategic vision of the district, and us aligning towards that and reviewing graduation requirements. And so, expecting the change form each year is the floor for us. As a school board, you will get this, and it will help, for us to continue some consistency in the conversations that we're having, at the building level with counselors, as we work with staff. It is a very cumbersome, time-consuming process, and we hope each year it gets a little easier because we work on it, and it doesn't have to be as heavy of a lift every year. But there was a lot of good effort between teachers and counselors, staff steering to pull this together, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward with it.
Christy, Kim, and then Laura.
We're chatty tonight. So one of the things that I've heard a lot about lately is, we're not teaching any civics. So I want to point out that in the required courses for 9 to 11, they're going to take self and society in grade 9, where they're going to get civics on the local, state, and national level. Is this put in a place where people who've been asking for curriculum mapping, I know this isn't curriculum mapping, but it gives a bit of information that might be interesting to people who want to know what we're teaching. I feel like you can read this and get a really good idea on a lot of what's going on. Is this posted in a place where just students and families would see it, or would it be possible to put it like on the SAU 39 website?
The program studies is posted on the Souhegan website.
Okay.
It
Oh,
is.
so they go to school.
Yep, it's under the quick links on the far right side.
Okay.
Another thing that we are working on with our humanities classes are the curriculum documents. So we started this work this summer. It's pretty intensive work. So to work on it throughout the school year, we're hoping to have that wrapped up.
And my other question is, I noticed on the New Hampshire Department of Ed website, we're supposed to be doing a certain amount of New Hampshire history in with the U.S. history. Is that happening in the 10th grade class where they're doing American studies? Would they also be getting a little taste of New Hampshire history? And if not, is that possible to consider?
That would be something we'd have to look into exactly where and when.
It's something that a lot of people miss on that requirement, that we are supposed to be giving some New Hampshire history to students, not just here. A lot of homeschoolers tell me, we don't have to do that. And I'm like, well, if we want to graduate in New Hampshire, we do.
So most schools, they do the trip to the State House in 4th grade.
But there's a 9th grade requirement as
Ninth
well.
grade
And
too,
I took that. It was one of the best classes I had in Merrimack. And it was just like 6 or 9 weeks of US history of that whole year.
And we will be sending this to some people that, as I agree, is a wonderful overview of what we're doing. So I promise she will be sending this out.
You need help on the New Hampshire history part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
So thank you. This is outstanding. In my 12 years on the board, I've never seen anything so comprehensive. So love it. I'm really glad to see it. And I think, Mike, you just kind of alluded to it. And then what I was going to ask is how this is dovetailing into the rest of the educational goals of the SAU, right? Where everything is flow from elementary right up through into Souhegan.
Yeah, it's all in concept with one another. You know, as you look at the strategic vision, our priorities as a school, the things that we need to carry out to be able to do as a school to make sure that students and families are getting as good of an experience, an individual experience as we can. You know, that's really important for kids to be able to find their way within the different courses here, the different academic programs, the different clubs, the opportunities that we affiliate with other schools and school districts with CTE, how we partner with DLACs, how we partner with post-secondary. You know, public education is complicated. There's a lot of different things you can do. And, you know, so for us, it's to make that kind of transparent. But at the end of the day, you want kids to be able to graduate from Souhegan High School, being able to go do what they want with their first choice. And all this works into that. I mean, you want them to have as intense of it, you know, intellectually challenging programming as they want. But you also want the kids that, you know, who maybe not want all the AP and dual enrollment classes to find their way within it. And that makes public education complicated and to individualize it. So that's our step. We do have frequent conversations about how to align everything. We do work with central office. We do work with the assistants, both the assistant superintendents to do this and the superintendent to make sure we're aligned. And it's going to be a bit of a journey. We're hoping to accelerate that journey. So I know people who are working on the handbook, you know, Community Council and the Dean of Students, people who are working on this. I appreciate the acknowledgement because it is something that we have to organize our time really tightly to be able to do these things. But, you know, at the end of the day, what's driving us, I can tell you, is kids get 4 years right now at Souhegan High School. There is some urgency behind this. There is an urgency behind our work, and we're going to continue on that pace. And people who work with us know that, and we're grateful that they're with us on this. So appreciate that.
Well, I wanted to add that even the layout of this is really nice, and that I feel like you have organized all of the dual enrollment, which really was kind of the information students really didn't know which classes were dual enrollment or not. And you've organized all of that, and it's very clear and well defined. And I'm very excited to see that marine science and AP environmental science are pending, and I hope those. I have one last question.
One last question. And then we're moving
It's my last meeting, so you don't have to put up with me anymore. Video production. Like I know, even in college, students are just asked instead of an essay, create a video, turn it in. We have this half credit art. Is video production, they're in two separate parts of.
Yeah.
Laura, I love that you're bringing this up. This is
question.
so exciting. And if Steph were here, she would be really excited to hear it too. So with the new kind of visual arts standards, 21st century visual arts standards, we are seeing things like digital animation and video production live in the arts world.
Okay.
And I think that is our short-term.
I'm assuming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. All right. Any
Can I
last?
say one thing?
Absolutely.
Maybe not appropriate, but we keep talking about the SAT prep program, and I just wanted to say that I'm really grateful for the 3 teachers who are facilitating those sessions, because while we are making really good use of our resources, it would be not possible if they didn't step up to the plate for that. So I just want to acknowledge Steve and Gibbons and Brian Levine for doing that.
Right, thank you. Yeah, when we think about all the different things our teachers do, work on the program studies with you. They work on the SAT prep, they work on the senior project organization, they work on so many different things than just the classroom. It's amazing, and we're very lucky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, two board policies on the agenda, GBCE and BDD as first readings. All right. Okay. GBCE. Any comments? Right. Steve, is there anything that you feel needs to be brought up? Okay. All right, let's go to BDD. Do we want to vote on these separate? Oh, we don't have to vote on them, right? This is just the first read. Okay,
Just collecting comments.
just collecting comments, so nothing on.
So far, so good, by the way.
Next one, BDD, Board Superintendent Relationship. Any comments? Laura?
The GBCE.
Yeah.
Training relative to child sexual abuse prevention. Is there a funding component, and are we covered in our budget? If we pass this.
We use what?
A free
No,
resource.
no. Oh, we use.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, going to BDD then, Board Superintendent Relationship. Any comments? Discussion? Anything?
Should be fresh in everyone's mind. We just talked
We
about it last
literally just
Thursday.
talked about it, right? Is there anything?
Volunteers.
BDD is the Board Superintendent Relationship one.
I just, Steve, you said this, we already have a policy that's very similar to this, and this is just this is like the chart, it's something we've always had.
If I remember correctly, and we know that I don't, but I'm probably good here. All these words are in the existing Souhegan policy. It's just not formatted in this way.
Anything else?
I should say that all these words in the table are very stuff maybe improved.
It just maybe, we've had the benefit of this discussion at different places, just for the record. I personally don't like the table. I think it's very aspirational, and it goes far beyond what the NHSBA has recommended, and I think could be leveraged by people to challenge what we are doing or what we're doing, and in a way that's not productive. So for all of those reasons, I've kind of argued that we should just ditch this table. And I've not been persuasive yet for that, but I wanted to share my opinion and put that on the record at this level of the word structure.
Okay. The other.
I can support the moving of the table, but I won't be here to vote for it.
This is going to be the interesting part, right? Next, our next meeting will be a different seating at the table, so it could include your vote. Okay, so that's the first reading of those. So then the first reading of IJOC, volunteers. This policy came forward to us because we have the new out-of-school suspension policy that we want to make sure that we have proper documentation, plus any other volunteers within our school. We don't have this policy. This is one that Amherst School District had drafted, so we're just using this as a potential draft. So any comments going would be place to start. Is there anything, Steve, you feel you need to add on policy?
I'll confess to having a bad memory. I believe at the meeting we had after the public hearing.
Public hearing.
I said that Souhegan did not have a designated volunteer policy. We did. It is very brief, and broader, more comprehensive, it's probably a good idea. But we still do have this, we up and down that there's the opportunity for this volunteers all the time. And I regret my error.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on this policy?
Okay,
Go ahead, I have some.
I don't like the fact that the volunteers have to go through an application process. I mean, I can understand doing their application for criminal history, but an interview and a selection process from the superintendent and school administrators, I feel like it's too much to ask for a volunteer. I mean, it's one thing to say you're going to have a background check, but it's another thing to have some. I don't feel it's their place unless there's some behavior or something that would cause them not to want them to be a volunteer, but I don't think they should have to be vetted as volunteers. I think any parent or grandparent, or we should not put things in place that discourage volunteering in our school.
So looking at what Laura is just saying, I would suggest just a simple language change, paragraph where it talks about the superintendent. Page 121, which is page 2 of this policy. Just like the third paragraph down. Superintendent is hereby authorized to adopt procedures for which shall be used by school administrators for selecting and approving designated volunteers, which may include at least one of the following. And that would, because a volunteer application process is probably good to do, as is a criminal history record. Again, I think where Laura was going is depending on what the volunteer is needed for, it may require a different level of checking.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify and see, maybe you know this, but that level is for the designated volunteer piece only.
Right, the point is designated volunteers are those who might find themselves alone with the students, for example.
Okay.
school
So it's under the.
Yeah, that's.
There's
The school doesn't found that.
I know volunteers, and then designated volunteers are those who have a lot of freedom to act without supervision of other
Yes,
staff.
yes, I
And
did
that's why
read
we
that.
have, that's why we have the special designated volunteer status.
Gotcha. So, never mind.
Under the definition of designated volunteer, it has, if you work regularly with students, it's not necessarily just one-on-one. Let's say I came in every week to do some sort of volunteer role, it doesn't necessarily mean one-on-one. Coaches, assistants, that makes sense. Recurring classroom volunteers, assistants for extracurricular activities, photocopy volunteers, cafeteria volunteers, club volunteers, bus monitors, and recurring roles. I don't think it's just one-on-one, designated volunteer. That's where if they were only one-on-one, we could have the may include, as Tim was suggesting, if it's necessary to have more of a screening process.
Operationally, designated volunteers are ones that are alone with kids, even if. So if someone is alone with kids without a second adult or a school personnel, that status allows more comfort, more process. So it's not necessarily one-on-one, but it's operationally, it's those who may be alone with kids.
So maybe the may ought to go back up as a designated volunteer and say these may include but are not limited to. Because probably the recurring cafeteria volunteer isn't really going to be alone with students.
At the lower grades, yes, and it was taken from an Amherst policy. At the lower grades, they're escorting students to the bathroom, which is why we have that concern, and it's written this way.
If we are escorting students to the bathroom.
Like the hallway, whatnot.
Not in the bathroom, but.
Not- no, I know what you mean.
Anytime.
At the high school level, no, but that is why it's
Yeah.
here
If you're
with the
alone,
Amherst policy.
if you're alone with kids, supervising kids, it allows that extra measures, background checking and checking with them. That's where it comes from. Operation.
So one of the questions I had, and because we're at a high school level, maybe it's something, says the building administrator shall provide the superintendent with a copy of the list of designated volunteers on a biannual basis. This list is subject to the review and approval of the superintendent. Out of curiosity, why is it approval of the superintendent, not approval of the principal in charge of the building? Or is that something, because we're high school level, we want to consider, is it Mike's choice versus having to go?
Sometimes I guess we would follow up to make sure all the background checks were done. Those are a central office function, the background check piece, it's not a building function.
And you would hold that wherever you hold your other files?
Usually you create a list. And so there is a designated volunteer list on who could chaperone a field trip for by themselves.
The benefit being that if someone was a designated volunteer at the high school, you could also call them to monitor recess.
Right.
Well, then one other follow-up I want to do with that, sorry. Again, it goes back to the superintendent may also establish such health and medical screening criteria and standards as he or she deems appropriate for all guests, volunteers, and designated volunteers. Seems a little heavy-handed that we're gonna go through a medical screening. Like, is that really our business?
It's a good question. My first reaction is maybe, depends on what their role is. If they're an assistant coach and they're running up and down an athletic field and they fall ill, do we have a liability by enabling them to be in that situation for a condition that they didn't disclose? I don't know.
Coach is different than having volunteer.
No, well, maybe, I'm just saying, I can understand why this is maybe in the document. I'm not saying I agree with it, just trying to imagine a situation when somebody gets hurt as a volunteer. The question in my mind is, what is the limitation of our liability for that person? If we've directed that person, if we controlled that person in any way, now we're starting to assume some liability. If they slip and fall in our facility, get any kind of accident, I mean, there's a whole host of things that should be.
I mean, I could see designated volunteer, but when you get to a guest who comes in once, I don't think there should be any reason to release room for.
Can't imagine.
Right, so I think this needs taken out of there. Like, guest
This
just
is-
needs to go. Right, this should have been.
So I only saw this at the same time you all did.
Yeah, I think I want to read it.
So I'll fall back on, this has been the Amherst policy for a couple of years now. Certainly, when we were in status orange, we did medical screening in the sense of you can't come in without a mask. Right? So that was a thing. It's not the intended policy, but still. If we want to amend this, within our rights to do that, then it's two different policies in two different districts. We should want to send it on to the policy committee and see if we can make them harmonious. Because otherwise, some poor schmuck named Steve has to administer two policies that are 99% the same, but 1% different. And will he remember where the 1% difference is?
Right.
Aptly named, by the way.
Some poor schmuck Steve? Yeah. I lived that role.
And the other thing is, if the policies are different, can you really have, if the policies are different, can you really have one designated volunteer list? Or do you have to have the one in keeping with high school and the one in keeping with the others?
Different tabs. in the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Said the schmuck.
You know, you're my favorite schmuck.
I think maybe say something about Stephanie's first point about approval of the superintendent. I can understand why there's maybe an administrative advantage just to have one list around. Maybe the the purpose behind spreading that out is, or let me restate that. Maybe the language could be such approval not to be unreasonably withheld. You don't want there to be, somebody has a personal problem with a specific person, but they're a really good coach and they're getting along well with kids. So that person, because they're disfavored, is now out of favor, and they don't get to be on the approved list for reasons that are, let's say, unreasonable. And so if there's a mechanism to avoid that, and we can weave that into the policy language to achieve that goal, then I'm in support of what you're saying.
So Steve, I know your time is short here. So,
You know something about my health that I don't know?
okay, time at our table and a policy
go.
committee is short. I know I have some questions on this. It's probably worth me maybe typing up my list of questions, and then I don't know if we can bring it back on the next meeting as we read and see if we want to send it back to policy committee, and anyone else we can conglomerate into one list. And we can decide if we want to take it back to policy next week, maybe, because I think trying to unload it right now makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah,
With every vote happening sooner than that.
good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. My last policy committee meeting is on Wednesday. So
Better type fast.
Wow. Okay. All right. So if anyone has any questions on this policy, why don't you send them to me and I'll make a running list. And when we have our next seat at our table, we'll discuss the right path forward. Okay. All right. So ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds discussion. Amy, can you, this came up, and I had sent a message to the school board when we were putting together the presentation for deliberative. Was it public hearing deliberative when I pulled it? Deliberative. I think it was deliberative. There came forward, we had a question about how our ESSER funds were being spent. And so we were going to put this screenshot of where we were potentially doing ESSER funds, but what we found is that it's not budgeted. And because they're not budgeted items, it was really hard to fit into the presentation. It made sense to talk about it as a school board discussion instead. So that's why Amy is presenting it tonight.
Yeah, so Christine and I worked on this together. So you should have the memo at the back of your packet that provides the program, the revenue that we received, and the planned activities for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. So you'll see ESSER 2, the revenue is $54,000, and the planned uses the digital sign, software, summer reboot, Unified Insights data dashboard that Christine can provide more information on if you would like, as well as using funds for substitute teachers, which has been an increased need this year. And then ESSER 3, the amount of funding was just under 123,000, and those at this point are just projected uses of funds. Some items that have been discussed: outdoor classroom, learning loss summer program, math and world language summer work, redesign of the back library room, and also substitute teachers. So, and then there's a pretty detailed explanation of each of these activities underneath that chart. So we'll entertain any questions. Christine knows quite a bit about a lot of these items, and as I handle more of the financing side.
Does anyone have any particular questions regarding these? I have, so one of the questions, and this is what I had a conversation with Amy when we were going back to present this, the projected use of funds and how that list was derived. And we know there's some issues there. So like, this year we have learned that our skylights have issues. Can we use this money towards that sort of thing versus an outdoor classroom that, it's going to require maintenance of, when we put it towards those things. So I don't know if it's Amy or Christina, if you can handle.
Yeah, I can start.
start, I did want to mention the outdoor classroom. So we were required to post our planned and anticipated ESSER uses and get feedback from the community on those uses. And one of the biggest things from our survey for Souhegan, as well as all of our other districts, was an interest in an outdoor classroom. So that was really the community speaking on how they wanted us to utilize our ESSER funds. So I thought that's an important piece since it was not really discussed before we got that feedback from the community. That's something we have on our projected use of funds, and we wanted to be able to look into that more deeply and determine how those classrooms might be utilized and what that might look like. Would that be something small? Would that be something larger? And we want to make sure it's utilized before we go and start planning for that. So that was really from the community. We're required to use at least 20% specifically on learning loss. So in planning this, that's for ESSER 3. So in planning this, we're really looking learning loss summer programs was an important piece. And that could be utilized over the summer if we feel that our other funding, such as our Title I funds, would be better utilized for summer programming and there's not an additional need there, then we can certainly make adjustments and look at how we utilize that for learning loss in some other way, whether it's an after-school program, before school program, something like that, or something even more targeted, like a targeted tutoring program. So these really, the outdoor classroom and the learning loss are really the learning loss is required. We need at least 20% of the grant spent on that. And then outdoor classroom, we felt we needed to explore because that was feedback from the community. The other needs are really needs that have come up throughout the school year that we felt this could be a good use of funds. ESSER needs to be really used related to COVID. So to be able to recoup learning losses, to be able to support and continue with education during that time. Things like, the digital sign is communication. So skylights, for example, wouldn't fall into that, but something like HVAC systems, upgrades or filters or things like that could fall in. And even though that's a facility piece, it's improving indoor air quality. So those could. So, we're still kind of populating the list of where we feel our needs are and looking at how we would utilize the funding. Anything else?
I think it's prepare, prevent, and mitigate. So it's prepare for a pandemic, prevent the pandemic, and mitigate. That's the buzzwords when you look at it.
And just in terms of process, we need to complete these requests and submit them to the New Hampshire Department of Education for approval prior to doing any of this work.
Is there a deadline for submittal?
I think it's 24. ESSER 3, I think it's 24. ESSER 2 is 23.
In the fiscal year 20?
September.
September.
September 30 of those years.
September 2023 and September 2024.
Pretty sure.
Yes.
For 2 and 3 respectively.
Yeah, it's federal fiscal year as opposed to our fiscal year.
Do we have to submit the money, or do we have to spend the money first and then get recouped? Or do you say this is our plan and they send you the money and then you can spend it? You have to send it.
Yeah, well, ESSER works a little bit differently. If there was something that, for example, we needed to buy masks, we then could submit and request that funding and then be reimbursed once we submit that we paid for it. But even if we know something is coming up anticipated, we submit, we have approval, we still have to wait for the activity to happen. And then we submit monthly reports and then we get reimbursed for those monthly reports. That's how all of our federal entitlement grants work. It's actually a ton of work for the business office, for that monthly reporting for grants and ensuring that all of the correct accounts have been hit so that we're reimbursed.
So just to follow up on the deadline, so ESSER 2 set this September, or no, September 23, a year and a half-ish. And you have actual dollars, these are things we've talked about, the digital sign. These are contracted things, these are things that are have been done, or in the process of being done. I mean, they're committed, I suppose. So I guess the point is, we're not in any fear of missing that deadline on ESSER 2.
No.
We have a whole nother year on top of that to hone the appropriate uses at that time for ESSER 3.
We would ensure that we use these funds and not let them
not leave $1 on the table.
So, and one of the reasons I had started asking questions on this too is something like an outdoor classroom. I just want to make sure that if you're looking at something that's going to require ongoing maintenance, so something that's going to cost us budget money, I want to make sure that we're aware of that. So we are saying, okay, we're okay, like an outdoor classroom. We know there's going to be maintenance, but we're okay spending the money on that, knowing that there's maintenance. That to me is
100%.
key.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
100%.
So the 5800 data dashboard for Power School. Typically, when we go into Power School, all three districts do it together. So is this reliant on the other two districts also buying in or agreeing to utilize this?
Those costs are apportioned across all three districts, and we're utilizing ESSER funds across all three districts for that tool.
Okay, and the other districts are utilizing this as well?
Yes.
Okay, and will this be a continued, when I looked at the budget, there was about $300,000 worth of software just for the high school in all different categories. Guidance has some, there was a lot of software. So this is yet another additional software purchase, and we'll have to add this to the budget next year.
A little clarification there, yes and no. We're currently using software called Performance Matters. It is part of Power School, and it is a data warehouse tool. We purchased that when we purchased a Power School, and it was always planned for us to have some sort of data management tool. We realized after purchasing Performance Matters that it's really just a warehouse. It's not an analytics platform. So we feel like we have half a tool and not the other half. And Power School recently acquired Unified Insights, which is really that data analytics tool. So we're transitioning from Performance Matters to Unified Insights. Unified Insights, because it is really two tools in one, it is unfortunately more expensive than Performance Matters. But these costs will allow us to purchase, the initial cost to purchase Unified Insights, and then next year we have Performance Matters budgeted for already, since this was a planned use, and we're really substituting. It will be a little bit more expensive, but we'll be utilizing ESSER funds moving forward for that for at least through next year, and then looking to budget for that after. So this would eventually be a budget impact, but fairly minimal since we're replacing a current program.
I have a friend that's a teacher that discusses the data dashboard just privately, and it's almost too much information. I haven't even met the student yet, and there are all this analysis about the student before you ever meet them. So I would hope there'd be extra training for the teachers as they utilize this.
And training costs are built into our purchase. So the training is part of the purchase of the initial product.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry. So did you say we actually get pre-approval before usage of the ESSER funds on a particular project? We don't run in danger of not being reimbursed, I guess.
So if you don't wait for approval, you can run into danger of not being reimbursed for it. So it's always better to submit.
Right.
And that goes to the New Hampshire Department of Education. They review, approve, or send back. And often when they send back, they'll be able to speak to you about why it wasn't approved. And sometimes it's wording in, or it's not always that it's not an approvable activity. It might just be some details that they need for that. So they typically work with you. We know what's approvable through ESSER because we have all of that information. So we're pretty careful to make sure that we're putting something in there that's approvable, but it's always better to get approved first because you do run the risk of not being able to utilize it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna, as an example, we have had times where we've submitted something that we needed to have included in our contract that we were abiding by state and wage laws. So we just need to amend the contract to make sure that that is in fact happening and that those words are in there. So that would be an example of the reason why it might get sent back. And then it would be approved
we tried to put the skylights, for example, which is a great example, like, could it be used for something like that? And again, maybe if it was posing a significant health risk, but we'd have to justify that, and that might be hard, I think more HVAC. With that, if it was something that's not approvable under ESSER, it would be sent back to us, and then if we did spend the money, we would run the risk of having to find budget funds for it.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I think the thing that I was really wanted to make a point of is that there's anything that's going to be an ongoing budget item. So like even the dashboard is going to become an ongoing budget item. I want to make sure that we're aware of that ongoing item. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so we have public input number 2. If anyone would like to say something, please approach the mic and say your name, address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Trinity Coleman, Simeon Wilson Road. 32. I forgot to say something in my previous statement. I'm just hoping that you all also look into and investigate the timeline that took place in the latest allegation. The state board also verified that there is no duty to put an employee on automatic leave just because an investigation has been opened. And so looking at both the press release and the administrative leave, having done both of those, it would seem like there would need to be some sort of reason because of safety to the students that would need to be done. And so my question is, what I want you to look into is, there have been reports that the superintendent was aware of these allegations before reinstating the teacher with the previous issue, the previous matter. And so I would like you to look into, did the superintendent, in fact, was the superintendent, in fact, already aware of those allegations? If so, when did the superintendent become aware of them? At what point did the superintendent report to the state board? At what point did the superintendent find out that the state board was going to officially formally find out that the state board is going to have an investigation? And how is that related to the date and the time that the press release was released? And on a personal note, I know I've been here a lot, you've heard from me a lot, I'm very tired of it. I just want you to understand that the music program is very, very important to me. I have 2 students who already went through 4 years with Carl, one of whom is a double major this year, freshman year, one of them being jazz performance, big impact, really good program for him, and for both of them. I have 2 more students younger in middle school, AMS, as well as in Wilkins, who both are going to be music students, and it's very important to them. They're very passionate about it. I have a junior right now, and my junior, at the end of 7th grade, when he was a 7th grader at AMS, he was diagnosed with bone cancer, and he was a very good athlete at that time. He was a passionate, good, competitive hockey player. And he was also in 7th grade, the fastest runner on the cross-country team for 7th grade, the 2nd fastest for the school when they won the tri-county meet. He also played basketball with many of the kids who just won the state championship. After he was diagnosed, he had major surgery on his leg. In 2018 of August, he had that surgery. He's, by the way, 3 years in remission, which is really good. But he has been in 1 or 2 crutches ever since August of 2018. So music is one of the extracurriculars that he can still do. He's one of the most resilient kids I know. So he can weather anything that comes his way, and he's done a great job. But as his mom, I hope you can understand why I'm a bit of a mama bear when it comes to defending the music program here at Souhegan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Souhegan Cooperative School Board, once again. My name is Tony LaBranch. I am State Representative for the town of Amherst. To comment on Steve's and John's question of where this unionization effort is coming from, I would like to emphasize how shocked I am that the staff in this building feel the need to reach out to their state representative to share their concerns and express their fear of retaliation by administration for asking questions and criticizing the decisions of the administration. This is supposed to be a school, and I do not believe that fear is conducive to learning. That is why I come here tonight to share these stories in hopes that this board will take these concerns seriously and look into these reports of a toxic work environment. I would like to expand on my earlier comments about a situation where a student is being targeted by administration for exercising their First Amendment right to record a public official while they conduct their official duties. This should be shocking to everyone that the student simply recorded the audio of a public presentation made by the principal of the school and uploaded it to a community Facebook group, and yet the administration has decided to take dramatic step of filing a police report. As stated earlier, the student would have been charged under RSA 570, which is New Hampshire's wiretapping statute, which clearly states that there is a reasonable expectation of privacy needed for prosecution. I'm disturbed that the administration would go to such lengths to prosecute dissent in the school. And I really hope that this board takes that seriously. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to speak tonight? No? Okay, well, before we end, I have one last thing we need to do. So. George. Huh? I know. So, so we have 3 fellow board members who are not rerunning this year. So this is their very last meeting and last opportunity for us to recognize them. So first, George, for you from us, thank you for all your time, your questions, your energy on the budget, your knowledge on those issues. We really appreciate it. And coming down the hill from Mount Vernon to make all the meetings, it's greatly appreciated, and it's been a joy working with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Laura, for you, from all of us, for your past 3 years of research, questions, more research. It's been appreciated. The serious nature that you've taken the job and really dove into everything has helped us, I think, become stronger to ask more questions. So thank you. And Steve. This is what, is it about 18? Is that right?
18, yeah.
18. And that's just on the school board. Outside this, before that, you were on various committees, you worked in the town. So we want to thank you for your years of policy, your years of PPC, your years of just serving on the board. It's been appreciated, and thank you so much.
Thank you for that. It was never about me, it was always about education for kids.
Absolutely. So thank you. That is the end of our public meeting. We do have non-public that we need to enter into on 91.832 A and C. B and C. Can I have a motion? Second. Pim, motion. Christine, second. All in favor going into non-public?
Has to be a roll call.
Roll call.
What are you gonna do without me? Yes.
Brian, yes.
Glover, yes.
Sponsor, yes.
Peter, yes. Terry, yes. Okay, we're going to go into non-public. Thank you very much, everyone.